Jurickson Profar's out for the entire 2026 season, and the more I think about it, the more it doesn't make a lot of sense to make an addition. Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today, your daily source for news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby, award-winning baseball writer and podcaster. You can follow me on social media at Crosby Baseball. You can find all of my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. We're proudly part of the Believe Podcast Network and presented to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app or go to fanduel.com to get started. We got the details on what Jurickson Profar did, specifically what he took and all of that, and it's hard to defend the guy on this one, right? If you think about last year, I talked about this on the live show yesterday, the thing that he took last year is commonly used as a fertility treatment, okay? So there is a possibility that he was using it for a non-performance performance enhancing, but not in the athletic sense, right? Not in the baseball sense. Performance enhancing substance, and it went bad. This time, however, MLB announced the suspension last night. They say he tested positive for exogenous testosterone. And in essence, what you need to know about this is one, you're not going to accidentally take this. It is done via injection or via patch or via pellet. It's used to treat low testosterone, increasing serum levels. It helps improve mood, libido, bone density, and muscle mass. But also, it often causes issues with infertility and atrophy down there. So it's not a fertility thing. It's not used for surgical recovery. It's not used to speed injury healing. There legitimately is one reason why an athlete would take this, and it's performance enhancement. Even if you were the type of person that was inclined to give him the benefit of the doubt last time, and I'll be honest, I was one of those people, that's gone. Because there's no logical explanation to be taking something like this other than you were trying to cheat. And Jurickson Profar tried to cheat, and he got caught. And he is done for the entire 2026 season, and it is my preference that as soon as they are able to do it, which they have to wait until after the suspension, it is my preference that they go ahead and release him and do not have him on the roster for 2027. It's possible they hold him during the CBA negotiation process to see if there's some sort of relief that they get in the CBA. I talked about this yesterday on the live show. Teams cannot void guarantees in a contract because of one or multiple failed PED tests. But I genuinely do think that is something that the league may bring up in negotiations with the Players Association. If a player fails multiple tests, the team have some sort of limited ability to void guarantees, cut them without having to pay them, etc. So maybe they hold him for that. But if it's me, you cut him. You don't even consider playing him in 27. You're done. You're washing your hands of Jurickson Profar because he chose to betray every guy in that clubhouse. And just a little while ago, as of the time of this is 4 noon on Wednesday, the Braves beat will have been in the clubhouse in Northport and talked to the players. And I imagine, I'm recording this before they do that, I imagine there's going to be some pretty strong statements made. A lot of guys really didn't get into it a lot in detail last spring when it happened. And they said kind of the right things when they welcomed him back to the clubhouse mid-season. And then he chose to betray them. To betray that trust that they gave him, to take the forgiveness they showed him and throw it away. I can't imagine the comments are going to be very nice out of that clubhouse. Again, recording this before that happened, I'll recap all of what they say on the record that we get from the beat down there in the Northport report at bravestoday.com on Wednesday afternoon. But let's talk about what the Braves do from here, right? I kind of speculated a little bit in the live show, kind of off the cuff, what I think is an option here, what you could do, what you might not do, etc. The more that I think about it, the more I sit down and look at this, I don't know if the Braves actually make a change. Like, I don't know if you actually bring somebody in. And there's a couple reasons for this. I think the first reason is there's not really an obvious guy left on the market that makes a lot of sense to replace some of what Jurickson Profar was giving you. Because if you think about Jurickson Profar's role this year, there was really kind of three things that they were counting on him to do. Start in the outfield against left-handed pitching. Mike Yastrzemski's not going to play against lefties. Career 79 WRC plus against lefties last year was a 20. Not 120, 20. Now, granted, small sample size, he gets protected against lefties, but virtually unplayable in that very small sample size. So they're not going to play him a lot against lefties, okay? So that was thing one that Profar was being asked to do. Thing two was being that on-base engine, right? Drawing a lot of walks, doing a lot of stuff to get on base so that there was guys for a Matt Olson to drive in, for an Austin Riley to drive in, for a Drake Baldwin to drive in, which, by the way, now we probably have the answer to, do you bat Profar or Baldwin second? You bat Baldwin second because Profar's not batting anywhere. He can't play in MLB. He can't play in the World Baseball Classic. He can't play in any of the partner leagues, so he can't go to the Atlantic League for independent ball. Maybe the Bananas would take him. I feel like they probably have standards and would not take him either. He's honestly probably going to have to leave the country. I don't know if he'll be allowed to stay because his visa is to work and he's not allowed to work anymore. That's a whole angle of this I hadn't considered until just this second. He may not be allowed to stay in his Atlanta area home or wherever he lives during the season. He may not be able to stay there because he was admitted into the country to play baseball and he legally cannot do that now. I don't know what the rules are here. But anyway, and then the third role that Profar had was being a switch hitter and kind of balancing the lineup, right? You had a lot of options to do like a left, right thing. Albies also a switch hitter, but you have lefties in there, like, Baldwin and Olsen and guys like that. And so the idea was left, right, back and forth. You're not going to find one free agent that can replace all of that stuff. And I don't think you should sign multiple free agents in response to this. I don't even really know if you should sign one. And I should probably explain that case and kind of what I'm thinking about that. We'll do that next, actually, right here on Braves Today. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at IQ Bar, our exclusive snack, hydration, and coffee sponsor. They have IQ Bar protein bars, IQ Mix hydration mixes, and IQ Joe mushroom coffee. It's the delicious, low-sugar, brain and body fuel you need to win your day. They sent me an ultimate sampler pack. This has 9 bars, 8 IQ Mix sticks, 4 IQ Joe instant coffees. Some of the flavors of the bars: wild blueberry, peanut butter chip, matcha chai, that's fancy, chocolate mint chip, my wife's already claimed that one, lemon blueberry, chocolate sea salt, banana nut, lots of fun flavors there. The mixes, the hydration packs, all kinds of flavors: iced tea and lemonade, lemon lime, blood orange, raspberry lemonade. And then the coffee is the standard coffee flavors you'd think. There's a cafe mocha, original black, vanilla spice, hazelnut, things like that. But all of these products in this box, clean label certified, they're free of gluten, they're free of dairy, soy, GMOs, and artificial ingredients. And over 20,000 5-star reviews and counting. So more people than ever are fueling their busy lifestyles with IQ Bars, brain and body boosting bars, hydration mixes, and coffees. And again, the sampler pack has all three. So right now, IQ Bar is offering our podcast listeners 20% off all IQ Bar products, including that ultimate sampler pack and free shipping. To get your 20% off, text MLB to 64,000. That's MLB to 64000. That's MLB to 64,000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby. I had some time to actually pull some numbers. Let's go through the options to replace Jurickson Profar. Okay. We're going to look at on the roster. We're going to look at free agents. And then we can wildly speculate about, do you go try to get a trade or not? I mentioned this a little bit in the show yesterday, going to trade for like a Byron Buxton or something. But, okay. So, none of the guys on the roster, none of the remaining outfielders on the roster have a ton of success in their careers against lefties, okay? Eli White's on the 40-man roster. Your non-roster invitees, Ben Gamel, Deshaun Kiersey, Brewer Hicklin, Jose Azocar, okay? Eli White, career 63 WRC plus versus lefties. It's important to point on a career number for him. He's not had really good offensive numbers until last year. So that is kind of skewed a little bit, but still, there you go. Ben Gamel, 89 WRC plus. Not awful, but below average. Kiersey, Hicklin, Azocar, they have no significant sample sizes. They either have not played in the majors or have played very, very little in the majors. So no real sample sizes to speak of here. When you look at guys who can hit lefties adequately in camp, you got a couple options. The media, Fangraphs did this. A lot of national people have been saying, oh, Dom Smith's going to make the roster now. Because Dom Smith's a first base and left field type. And by left field, I mean he can stand out there on the grass. But defensively, he's not good at all. He has a career 90 WRC plus against lefties. Again, not terrible. But if you were going to keep Dom Smith for that, just keep Ben Gamel, a guy who can actually play the outfield. Ben Gamel can actually do something out there for you. I do think Kyle Farmer might end up being the legitimate option here. And that's not exciting on its face because Kyle Farmer, as a player in his career, has not been very good. When you look at Kyle Farmer, 8th round pick in 2013 out of UGA, he is a career 247 hitter with a 694 OPS. But good news. In his career, that 9 years he's been in the majors, he has 792 plate appearances against left-handed pitching with a career 117 WRC plus. So, he legitimately can do something against lefties. He can give you above average offense. The issue here is he's almost entirely been an infielder in his career. He's played short, he's played second, he's played third. He has gone out in the grass. He has gone to the outfield. But here's the thing. In his career in the majors, he has 6 innings. Not 6 starts, not 6 complete games, 6 innings. Really what it was is this is something where he probably subbed in for somebody as a pinch hitter or a pinch runner and then was left in the game in their position to finish the bottom half of the inning. That is probably the extent of his time. He got 2 games in the outfield with Cincinnati in 2020. He got 2 games in the outfield in 2021. He got 3 games in the outfield in 2023. And I know I just said 7 games, but 6 innings. That is correct. He has gotten into 7 different games defensively, but he's been out there for a total of 18 outs. So not a lot of experience in the outfield for Kyle Farmer. Maybe that's something where you send Eli White to the grass. We know Eli White's a very good defender. AA has talked about they view Eli White as a Gold Glove caliber defender at all 3 positions. Little much. I think that's probably a little higher than he has been able to show, but he also has not had that consistent playing time, so I'll give him that. But maybe this is a scenario where you put Kyle Farmer as the DH and you let Eli White play left field and have him bat 9th. Maybe the Kyle Farmer game, where Kyle Farmer's in the game versus lefties, You take somebody like Ozzy and you put him at DH. You give him some load management and put Ozzy at DH because Ozzy's defense isn't that good. I do think it's worth pointing out on Eli White. I said bat him ninth, right? Last year, if you look at just last year, it's a smaller sample size, right? He only got 271 plate appearances. So he got just under half a season of plate appearances total, not against lefties, total. He had 96 plate appearances against lefties, but his OPS was 92 points higher against left-handed pitching than it was against right-handed pitching. Eli White's best offensive year last year, he had a 736 OPS against lefties, a 644 against righties. He hit 5 home runs in 175 plate appearances against right-handers. He hit 5 home runs and 96 plate appearances against left-handers. Maybe, just maybe, that is something where with more playing time, Eli White can grow into a legitimate contributor and a guy that can handle lefties well, or at least well enough for you to get by. And I kind of think that's going to end up being where we look at this, is we say like, and I'm going to get to that about like the sample size here and kind of what we're talking about. Another option here could be a guy like a Jonah Heim. That is, again, he recently in his career, he's not been that good. Against lefties, he does hit, for his career, much better against lefties than righties. 257 average against lefties compared to a 214 against righties. And an OPS that is 107 points better against lefties than righties. The issue with that is it's still just a 733 OPS against lefties, right? It's not like it's world beating against lefties and just okay against righties. It's still not, it's not bad, but it's not great. 733 is okay. That's what it is. If you look at his best season of 2023, which I know 2023, a lot of weird things with the balls. He hit 260. He had a 755 OPS. He did perform much better against lefties. And again, small sample, 91 plate appearances. He hit 325 with an 856 OPS against lefties. If they feel like Jonah Heim's offense is back to where it needs to be, which is a giant question. He is reunited with Tim Hires, though, who was with him in 23 when he had that career best season. If they feel like Jonah Heim's offense is where it needs to be, he's another option at DH on a lefty start day. And then Mike Yastrzemski is going to be in left field against righties. The weakness you have right now, and honestly, you know what? I'm going to put a pin in that. I'm going to come back to that. If you look at outside additions, outside options that you could go to here, there's not a lot of great stuff. I mentioned this on the live show yesterday. Starling Marte signed an MLB deal with the Royals. Michael Conforto hits lefties well, minor league deal with the Cubs. Randall Grichuk, platoon bat, minor league deal with the Yankees. Austin Hayes, minor league deal with the White Sox. Mike Tauchman, minor league deal with the Mets. Miguel Andujar went to the Reds. Like a lot of those platoon guys have signed. There are a few guys left, though. One of the names, the first names that came up, is Andrew McCutchen. I talked about it a little bit on the live show. I do think there's a little bit of value there as far as the veteran hitter, the leader in the club, to be a mentor, not necessarily the leader, but a mentor in the clubhouse. He's played 21 innings, or 21 games and 147 innings in the grass in the last 3 years. So the question would be, what does his defense look like? But he's hit 242 with a 105 WRC plus overall. So he would be a guy, it's a 242 with a 105 WRC plus overall in the last couple seasons. But against lefties, 107 WRC plus, slightly better. So he would give you an above average bat you could stick in the lineup against left-handers and potentially play him out in the outfield so that you didn't feel like you needed to stick Kyle Farmer out there and have him learn on the fly, or just have Kyle Farmer learn on the fly. If we see tomorrow's lineup in Northport and Kyle Farmer has an outfield glove, that'll give us an idea of what they want him to work on. There are a couple other outfielders here. Jesse Winker, Manny Margot, Tommy Pham. I saw all of those names mentioned yesterday. A couple of them came up in the live chat, or in the chat on the live show. Went and pulled all of those numbers. Jesse Winker, these are all the last 3 years for the splits, right? Try to get away from the full career split and look at the last couple seasons. Jesse Winker, 229 average, 92 WRC plus versus lefties. He's been below average. Manny Margot, 273 average, which is nice, 93 WRC plus. It's empty batting average, which batting average isn't the worst thing in the world, but it's empty batting average there. Tommy Pham, 230 average, 97 WRC plus versus lefties. 3 guys that are all kind of in the same bucket as far as they're going to hit, other than Manny Margot, they're going to hit in the low 2s, and they're going to be slightly below average against lefties. I don't see the utility in bringing in a guy like that. It just doesn't make sense to me. There is, last year, Justin Turner, old man Justin Turner, hit 276 with a 112 WRC plus against lefties. That was kind of his platoon role with the Cubs. Michael Busch at first base. They didn't want Michael Busch facing a lot of lefties. Justin Turner did a lot of that. He played some first, and he did a lot of DH stuff. He's also 41 years old and unsigned. I don't think the Braves are going to want to bring in a guy who's going to be stuck in the DH spot every single time. At least some of these other pieces, you can play them on defense, right? You can send Andrew McCutchen out there for 5 or 6 innings or however long it takes to get that lefty starter out of the game, right? You can send Jesse Winker out there. You can send Tommy Pham out there. You can't send Justin Turner. 1, you're not going to replace Austin Riley or Matt Olson with Justin Turner. But 2, you probably just can't do it anyway. I'm 41 years old, and I get winded walking uphill to the corner to get the kids off the bus. I'm sure Justin Turner is in better shape than me, but probably also struggles at 41 years old to do all the things you have to do to be in the major leagues. The end of the day, I don't know if they make an addition, and I don't know how much getting somebody to hit against lefties actually matters. We'll break that down next, right here on Braves Today. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Fantrax, the absolute deepest fantasy baseball platform in the world. If you are the commissioner and you're setting up the league, tons of scoring options. You can have wins plus quality starts be a stat. You can do the pitcher's team winning the game, whether or not the pitcher had anything to do with it. Like, there's tons of scoring categories you can do. OPS for hitters, walk-off or like game-winning hits and runs. Like, that can be a scoring statistic. You can have somebody get an extra 5 points in your fantasy baseball matchup if they get a game-winning hit. Just crazy things like that. The player pool is incredibly deep. Any player I can possibly think of, they're in the Fantrax app. And I know I have a commissioner for one of my fantasy leagues, my home dynasty league, that frequently emails them when he finds like a player that should be in there that's not, or he finds an error. It doesn't happen a ton, but they go and they update it and they fix it. Like, they want this to be the deepest and most accurate player pool there is. They have dynasty leagues, they have redraft, they have best ball, they have a league treasurer that will collect the funds for you versus needing to use one of the payment apps where you send money back and forth between people. And the app pops up and tells you if you didn't set your fantasy lineup for that day. So, Fantrax with an X, Fantrax.com/Braves today is how you sign up for a free account and start your league today. That's Fantrax with an X.com/Braves today. Final segment of Braves Today, Lindsay Crosby. Let's talk about why I don't know if the Braves make a move just to get a guy to hit lefties, and I don't know if it matters if they do or not, okay? So I still do think that, like, the most likely outcome here is Atlanta probably going to somebody like Andrew McCutchen and offering him, hey, we'll give you either a minor league deal that pays you $2.5 million if you make the major league roster, or here's a 40-man spot and a deal, but a non-guaranteed deal, right? If we release you, we don't have to pay anything more than termination pay. But it really does feel like they're probably going to roll with what they have. And I think the reason for this comes down to Sean Murphy and Ha-Seong Kim. Because right now, the conversation that we're having is you have to figure out a DH against right-handers. That's what Profar was going to do. And you have to figure out who is going to play against lefties. Eli White could potentially be a guy against lefties. I mentioned that in the last segment. We don't know what he would do with prolonged exposure to lefties. It was a small sample size last year. But in the last 2 seasons, I deliberately threw out 2023 because teams were aggressively setting their rotations to avoid throwing their lefties against Atlanta. The last 2 seasons, 24 and 25, the Braves had about roughly 1/4 of their games were against lefties. It was somewhere between 42 and 46 games. Like it was 42 one year, 46 the other, so 44 is the average, right? Which if you think about a 162 game season, that's close to 25%, okay? So 1 in every 4 games against the lefty. Yes, you have a bunch of money freed up. You just freed up $18 million because it's Profar's salary plus the luxury tax you were paying for him. Is it worth going out and signing a guy who is going to play 6 innings every 4th game? If you're just worried about lefties, then no, I don't think it is. If you're just worried about finding somebody to play, to start in the lineup against left-handed pitching, I don't think it's worth, or I don't think it makes a ton of sense to go out and sign a guy to play 6 innings every 4th game. Because, and I say that we don't know what the rotations are going to look like for all of the teams that we face early, right? We know the Royals are probably throwing Cole Reagans on opening day. He's a lefty, so you're going to face a lefty there. But having not dug through all of those and trying to project out what the rotation might look like in a month and a half or something, I'm just kind of casually go with 1 and 4. If you feel like you can find enough offense from the righty DH spot, the DH spot when you're facing a righty, then I don't think it makes a ton of sense to go out and sign somebody. And this, I imagine, knowing kind of what I know about how the Braves have been approaching roster additions this winter, they probably feel the same way. Think about this whole thing with the rotation. What's their position been? We only want to add somebody if they are very clearly going to bump down a couple other guys in the pecking order, right? They don't want to add a guy just to be a number 5. And that's personally why I don't think this is going to be the catalyst to make them go sign Lucas Giolito or Zach Littell. If they weren't going to sign those guys after Schwellenbach and Waldrop went down, and you already are worried about a roster crunch, nothing's different now other than you have more money. And the money's not the reason they didn't sign anybody. They didn't sign anybody for the rotation because they like the guys they have and they don't want to jettison a depth piece just to add a back-end starter when they feel like they have plenty of back-end starters already. I kind of feel like that's where you are now with an addition to the outfield. There's nobody out there that is clearly worth giving up what you already have. And I'm not saying what you have is great. I don't think Brett Wisely changes things. I don't think Kyle Farmer meaningfully changes things unless he ends up, like I guessed, being really good against lefties, right? Like, none of the guys at the end of the roster are guys you clearly have to keep. But nobody currently on the market is a guy that you clearly have to have. Yeah, sure, maybe McCutchen, genuinely the mentorship and things that he give you would be worth whatever money you had to pay him to get him to sign. Sure, I don't know if that's true or not. It might be. Marcell Ozuna was a great hitting mentor in the clubhouse. I'm going to avoid calling him an overall mentor because we know his troubles in the past. But from a hitting perspective, he was a great sounding board for guys. He really helped a lot of guys with struggles they were having with mechanics, confidence, pitch, whatever it might have been. Maybe McCutchen can do that for the Atlanta Braves. I don't know. It'll feel weird to not see him in a Pirates uniform, but maybe that's a thing he can do. But if your goal is to just find somebody to play left field against lefties, it doesn't make a lot of sense to sign somebody. Now, I still think just like the rotation, if you can make a trade and you can shoot high enough in a trade, sure, that makes a lot of sense. Maybe it's Matsutake Yoshida or Jarren Duran of the Red Sox. I don't think either one of those guys is going to move for a package you want to pay, but maybe. Lars Nootbaar of the St. Louis Cardinals. He can play both corner outfield spots. He can fill in center field for you. He's also sidelined after heel surgery. They think he might be ready for opening day, so that's taken on another injured player. A little bit of a risk there. Steven Kwan of the Cleveland Guardians. I don't think Cleveland's going to move him, but there's been whispers about that now for, I feel like, a season and a half of them possibly moving on from Steven Kwan. He would give you a high on base, high batting average, good defense guy that can play every day in left field. Byron Buxton. We talked about that on the show yesterday. If you can get Byron Buxton, maybe even also Joe Ryan or something, that's a clear upgrade. If the Braves make a move outside of maybe a signing of McCutchen to a non-guaranteed deal, I think it's only going to be something like that. It's only going to be a giant signing, a giant trade for a guy like a Buxton or a Kwan or a Duran. Because, like, you have quantity, right? You can throw Eli White back there. You saw how many terrible guys we played last year. The break in the outfield. And again, now a lot of that was Jurickson Profar's fault because he got popped last year. You gave 450 plate appearances, more than that, to Alex Verdugo and Jared Kelenic and Stuart Fairchild and, guys like that. And so even if you have to piece it together with what's on the roster, as soon as Sean Murphy's back, you add a high caliber bat to the lineup. Whether it's Baldwin being able to DH on days Murphy's behind the plate, I'm still a believer that Murphy will be back and be better when he's fully healthy. He's been dealing with this hip injury for years now. We saw the first half of 23 how good he looked. He said he wore down some because of the heat. I also feel like the hip injury, the longer he got in every season, the worse and worse the hip got. And if the first half of 23 if he can do 80% of that, he was hitting over 300 for like a month stretch in there when he played almost every single day. If that's the kind of stuff Sean Murphy can do after healing the hip, then getting him back is a much bigger deal than anybody you would sign on the free agent market. When Ha-Seong Kim comes back, again, we're assuming mid-May on this. When Ha-Seong Kim comes back, guess what? Mauricio Dubon's pretty good against lefties. He can play the outfield. You've solved the platoon half of Mike Yastrzemski. You've solved that right there. You're done. You got it. You're taken care of. You're good. And so I feel like I'm starting to repeat this now, but I don't see the Braves, based on the way they've operated so far this offseason, I don't see them going out and making a depth signing just to make a depth signing. Again, maybe they bring somebody on a minor league deal. We saw they brought in Martin Perez on a minor league deal. They're not afraid to bring in a guy on a minor league deal that they can stash in Gwinnett if they need to. But what they're not doing is they're not guaranteeing roster spots to back end number 4 or 5 starters. They're not guaranteeing roster spots to bench pieces if they can help it. Why is this going to be any different? Now, the argument there, the flip side of this could be if they're really worried about finding offense from the DH spot against righties. If they don't trust Eli White to rotate in for Ronald and Ronald to DH twice a week or something. If they don't trust Kyle Farmer to rotate in for Ozzie or somebody else to go somewhere and cover for a guy so that guy can be in the DH. Like, if they legitimately feel like they were going to end up playing Profar at DH 5 days a week and they've got to replace that offense, then yeah, maybe they go out and they make a notable signing with actual money. And for all I know, by the time the show goes up, they would have already done that. But the way they've operated, I don't see them doing it. This has been Braves Today for Wednesday, March 4th. Do me a favor, you're listening on audio. 5-star review would be fantastic. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when we go live. We drop a short for terrible news like Jurickson Profar being a dummy, all that good stuff. And as always, bravestoday.com, free or paid. That helps us out a ton. Also, the link is in the episode description for the 2026 podcast survey. I'm trying to get everybody's thoughts on what we can do better, what we're doing really well, what we need to improve on. And at the end of the survey, there's a free gift for you for doing it. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.